All right, back on Sports Bet Betting Inside today. Back to the Super Bowl. Now, strange that you got Brady and Belichick here, the best head coach of all time and the best quarterback, but they've struggled, as we talked about ATS, but they've also struggled as soon as the game starts. They've never scored a first quarter point in the 6 Super Bowls with Brady and Belichick. I can't believe that. And we talked about all the issues ATS, Teddy. Here's more.
Well, sure. I mean, let's look at the stats and the yards for these Super Bowls because we do have a definitive history for Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Even though the rest of the pieces have changed throughout the years, these two have been as steady as it gets. You know, you talked about giving Robert Kraft and the Patriots organization some credit. You know, I don't know if you give everyone credit. You give these two guys a heck of a lot of credit. But with 6 Super Bowls under their belts, we've got a track record, and a clear track record. Let's take a look at it. Patriots have outscored their opponents by a grand total of 6 points in those 6 Super Bowls. Yards per game, they've been outgained by close to 40 yards per game. Yards per play, they've been outgained by close to a yard per play. What have they done well? Well, they've avoided turnovers, only 6 in the 6 Super Bowls, and they've been able to force more than they've avoided. But the bottom line is, you look at the numbers there's not a whole lot special that New England has done in the Super Bowl itself other than win a handful of close games.
And every game's been close. You're right. Now they go against a young Atlanta defense. The stats are horrible. They are 27th ranked D in Football Outsiders. They're also a young defense. 5 starters in their first or second season. They did get better as the season went on. They did a pretty good job against Aaron Rodgers. Dan Quinn, quote, "The more you play together and gain experience, the faster you can play. We're playing faster now than we did earlier in the season. Our speed hasn't changed. We didn't go lower our 40 times, but because of our communication, because of the style and attitude that we're able to play with, we're able to play faster," end quote.
Yeah, and when we talk about this, it's kind of a conundrum for the handicappers. And I'll tell you what, for the side of this game, there's a real split amongst the sharp community. There's some guys I know that really like the Atlanta side. Some guys that I know really like the New England side. This is not a sharp square divide on the side in the Super Bowl. There is on the total. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But sidewise, not even close. And one of the biggest and most contentious issues of debates amongst the quote-unquote sharp community is how seriously do you take Atlanta's defensive stats? Because, as you mentioned, the season-long stats, they're not very good. The adjusted stats, the advanced metric stats, a little bit better. But it's only if you look at Atlanta down the stretch. You know, their last 8 games, they've held 6 opponents to 21 or less. You look what they did to Green Bay in the NFC Championship game, taking an elite offense that had been on fire and completely shutting them down until the game was 31-0. So the question is, which Falcons defense is real? The one with the mediocre stats, or the one that has stepped up and played really well during this stretch run as the Falcons have made it all the way to the Super Bowl? And that, in my mind, is as important as any other factor when it comes to the handicap of this game. Which of those 2 things do you believe? Mediocre defense, good defense. Because you ain't betting on Atlanta at +3 if you don't think that defense is pretty darn good.
Right. And do the stats lie on the Patriots? This might be a great defense, but they aren't getting the credit because of the quarterbacks they faced and the schedule they played. They caught some breaks, but also they had some issues midway through the season. They traded Jamie Collins, too. Just said, all right, you're doing your own thing. You're ad-libbing, you're out. And they traded him to Cleveland. I thought Patricia did an excellent job. You remember the Sunday night game when Seattle was going up and down the field, and at one point they were rushing 2 guys. It was ridiculous. Then they really came on down the stretch and only allowed 15 points per game. So how much is it? I guess we're going to find out the hard way on Sunday. But how good was this defense, or was it just you played a lot of bad quarterbacks?
And they played a ton of bad quarterbacks. You know, here's the chart. You know, we've shown it before. Let's show it again. You know, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brock Osweiler and Tyrod Taylor. They had Tannehill and they had Kessler and Whitehurst and, you know, Landry Jones. They had Kaepernick and Goff and Simeon and Matt Moore and on down the line. Now, they did have success against some good quarterbacks, most notably Big Ben in the playoff game in Foxborough 2 weeks ago. No question about that. But you have to put a but with that. When you look at the stats and say this team's the number 1 overall defense they've allowed, or in terms of points allowed, you have to put at least something of an asterisk about that. Atlanta, without any question, is the best offense that they've seen this year.
Yes, and when you look at the numbers, it was one of the best offenses in NFL history for a couple of reasons. One, during the regular season, they averaged 11 points and 1.2 yards per play above the norm, and that was against the number 2 slate of defenses that any team faced. In the playoffs, Matt Ryan's been on fire. They went up and down the field against Seattle, and they did whatever they wanted against Green Bay. Now, Peter King wrote about this Monday, Sports Illustrated. Belichick, we know this, he takes away what you do best, but they spread it around and everyone gets involved with Atlanta. So the people that are saying he's going to take away Julio Jones, that's not going to happen. Because when Julio Jones didn't play or had a below average game, they still went 6-0 and averaged 37 points per game. Against Denver, he had 2 catches. The other guys were terrific. Against the Saints, he had 1 catch. They scored 45 points. In the October win against Green Bay, 3 catches. They scored 33 points. The supporting cast had 16 for 175 and 3 scores. Also, we only had 4 catches against Arizona in a win where they had 38 points as well. So you can't just say, well, we'll take away Julio, because the other guys have killed you.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons that we liked Mohamed Sanu when we talked about the props on yesterday's Sports Pit. And I encourage you, if you haven't seen yesterday's episode, really, it's a nice couple of prop segments that we put together. I hope there's some good information in there. But, you talk about what Matt Ryan's done here in the postseason. Look, he's 53 of 75 in the year, 730 yards, 7 touchdowns, no picks. In fact, since throwing an interception against Kansas City back in, early December, 18 touchdowns without an interception during that span. This is a Joe Flacco-like run, except for that Matt Ryan, it's a little bit better than Joe Flacco in my mind. You talk about Jones and the diversity of that Falcons offense. How diverse is this offense? How about this? 13 different players caught a touchdown pass this season. That is having enough weapons to survive in a game where Julio Jones is covered.
Yep, and with the Patriots, it's always a different game plan. So against the Steelers, it was spread them out and throw because they saw zone coverage and Brady picked them apart and Hogan had 180 yards and he threw. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and it's a big dose of Blunt or Dion Lewis.
I'm expecting it. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see New England work on a power rushing attack because you have no idea what the Patriots are going to do. At least Dan Quinn understands it. Number one, they're difficult to defend. They use a variety of different formations, personnel groups. They've got a huge playbook from the pass game and the run game, gap schemes, trap schemes in the run game, quick game. I'd say it's an offense that's well-versed. They have different ways to attack you. And that is the strength of New England. The fact that it's hard to game plan against them because they're game planning against you. And the Patriots changed their scheme. Again, there's they spent the whole season where they ran a personnel package of 10 snaps the whole year. And then against the Steelers, they ran it 19 times and averaged 7.3 yards per play using that formation. I mean, nobody does that. Could Pittsburgh have guessed that they were going to do that? Of course they couldn't. Could they have prepared for it? Very difficult to do so. So Dan Quinn's up against it. One thing in Quinn's favor, we talk about all the Super Bowl experience with Belichick and Brady. This is Dan Quinn's 3rd Super Bowl in the last 4 years. So it's not like he hasn't been in these type of big games before. Remember, he was the coordinator in Seattle for their back-to-back Super Bowls earlier this decade.
You don't think experience is a big deal or the fact that Shanahan's leaving as well to take the 49er gig?
Potentially it is. I mean, look, New England, when you watch their press conferences, these guys have done this before. Everybody's going out there. They're like robots. They don't say anything interesting. They're not trying to do it. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, you have Shanahan going to San Francisco. You have the Freeman contract stuff. You have other type of issues that are rearing their heads that are definitely a concern if you like the Falcon side. If you think Atlanta is going to overcome the Patriots and overcome those off-field distractions that have been plaguing them a little bit this week, it's certainly possible for them to do it, but it doesn't make it any easier with some of the off-field stuff that's been going on and the fact that the experience factor does work heavily in New England's favor when it comes to the media spotlight that's shining on Houston right now.
All right, very good. Did 10 minutes on the game. That was terrific. And it's wipe a tear from your eye as it's over after Sunday. 47-27 on the football season. Here we go. Money time play of the day. It's been a hell of a run. Betting number 101, 102. Under 59, you bet. The Wise Guy special. Sharps are split on the side, not split on the total. It's the pros against the Joes in this one. And the Joes have won all playoffs. A lot of these games continue to go over. But, as we talked about, amazing but true, the Patriots have never scored a point, Brady and Belichick, in the first quarter. That happens again, we'll cash the ticket. If they get off to a slow start, and we expect a slow start in this one, under 59, that's the play of the day in the Super Bowl. And don't forget with the props, we gave out a pick on that as well. Go back and watch that earlier in the week. Feel good? You feel good?
I feel great, man. I'm excited about Google Hangouts tonight,
You know it. You know it. 8 o'clock Pacific. We'll answer all your questions. College basketball, NBA, and of course Super Bowl and props. Google Hangout 8 o'clock tonight. We'll talk to you then. And then we'll run everything down on Friday's show. Sports Bet. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, for the full video, go to SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.